Long before men built cities or learned the names of stars, there were the Watchers, angels who stood between heaven and earth. Their task was simple: to observe mankind. They were not allowed to guide, to speak, or to interfere. They were eyes of heaven, not hands. And among them was one who began to feel what he should not: Azel. Azel had once stood in the high courts of heaven, where the air shimmered with music and light that never faded. His wings were bright as sunrise, and his voice could calm storms. But when he was sent among the Watchers, something inside him began to change. He saw things the other angels ignored: the beauty, the pain, and the fragile hope of humans. He watched a woman bury her child in frozen soil. He watched a farmer's hands bleed as he prayed for rain that would never come. He listened to their cries, cries that heaven heard but did not answer. And for the first time in eternity, an angel felt sorrow. The other Watchers noticed. They whispered among themselves, wings rustling like uneasy wind. "You linger too long, Azel," one of them warned. "We are not meant to feel. Watch, record, and return." "Their pain echoes in heaven," Azel replied softly. "How can we look upon them and feel nothing?" "Because that is not our place," another hissed. "If we begin to pity them, we will fall. You know the law." "Perhaps the law has forgotten mercy," Azel said quietly. The words were dangerous. Even whispering them felt like touching fire. And yet, Azel could not stop watching. Each day he descended closer to the mortal realm, sometimes as mist, sometimes as wind, never touching, only standing near. He would sit unseen beside a weeping widow or rest under a tree where a dying man whispered prayers to the stars. He told himself he was only observing, but the truth was heavier: he was mourning. One night, as snow fell quietly across an endless forest, Azel saw something that would change all worlds. A girl was stumbling through the snow, wrapped in a torn cloak. She was young, maybe 20, her face pale, lips cracked, breath shallow. Fever had taken her. She fell beneath an ancient cedar and curled in the snow, shaking. Her hands clasped over her heart as if holding herself together. Azel stood over her, invisible and radiant. He saw her soul flickering like a candle about to die. She whispered into the wind, not words, but a sound of pure need, a silent plea. And something in Azel broke. "Please," she gasped. "Whoever you are up there. I don't want to die alone." No answer came. Not from the heavens. Not from the wind. Only silence. Azel trembled. He had seen 1,000 humans die, but never like this, so quiet, so undeserving. He knew what he was about to do was forbidden. But love, or perhaps compassion, burned stronger than fear. "Forgive me," he whispered to the stars. "If heaven cannot answer her, then I will." He stepped forward, revealing himself for the first time in his true form. Light spilled from him, golden and warm, melting the snow around her. The woman's eyes opened weakly. She did not scream. She stared at him, this figure of light, with tears in her eyes. "Am I dreaming?" she breathed. "No, child," Azel said, kneeling beside her. "You are seen. Who are you?" "No one that heaven will remember after this night." He placed his hand over her forehead. His touch was gentle, trembling. Then he began to sing. It was not a song of words but of creation itself, the hymn of restoration, a melody sung only once before, when the universe was born. Light flowed from his voice into her veins. Her breath deepened. Color returned to her skin. Her heartbeat steadied. Life returned. And in that single moment, heaven screamed. The stars dimmed. The clouds split. A wind like fire tore through the sky. Azel fell back, gasping. The light in his wings flared white-hot. His feathers ignited. He looked up, and saw heaven turning its face away. "Azel," a voice thundered from beyond the clouds, "you have broken the first law. No angel may interfere with the will of mortality." "She was dying," Azel shouted into the storm. "She prayed. And you would not answer her. It was not your choice to make." "Then whose choice is mercy?" he cried. Silence. Then, flame. His wings burned until only ash remained. His halo shattered like glass. His name was erased from the book of light. He was no longer an angel, nor was he mortal. He was something in between, a shadow cast from compassion. The girl, her name was Elia, opened her eyes, now warm with life again. She saw only snow melting around her and a faint trace of gold in the air. She thought she had dreamed it all. But Azel watched from the forest's edge, his once golden eyes now dim with sorrow. He could not speak to her. He could not return to heaven. He was an exile now, the first being cast out for love, not sin. "Live well," he whispered to her unseen. "That will be my forgiveness." And as the snow covered his fallen feathers, heaven turned silent. One law had been broken, and the universe would never be the same. Winter gave way to spring. Elia lived, stronger, brighter, but forever haunted by a dream of a man made of stars kneeling beside her in the snow. She told no one. Who would believe her? She returned to her small village by the river and tried to live an ordinary life. But sometimes she would pause by her window at night, feeling the wind move differently, as if someone unseen was watching over her. That someone was Azel. He stayed hidden among the trees, never closer than a breath, never farther than a heartbeat. He watched her fetch water, plant seeds, laugh with neighbors. She had become his reason to endure exile. His punishment was silence, but her life was proof that his choice had meaning. Days became months. Then one night, as the moon rose red over the forest, Elia woke with her hands on her stomach and tears in her eyes. Something inside her felt alive. Different. Not sickness. Not pain. Something sacred. Life was stirring within her. And heaven felt it. Across the sky, angels turned their faces toward the earth. A disturbance moved through creation, not like thunder, but like a shiver. A soul had been conceived that was not meant to exist, half mortal, half divine. Azel felt it too. He stood in the forest as a cold wind swept through the trees. His heart, if he still had one, trembled. "No," he whispered. "No, this cannot be." He had not touched her after that night. He had spoken no words to her. Yet the power he had poured into her to save her life had seeded something greater than either of them understood. He fell to his knees. "Forgive me, Father. I did not mean to make a life, only to spare one." But heaven did not answer. There was no thunder this time, no flames, no voice of wrath, only a heavy silence that seemed to say, "You have already undone enough." In the months that followed, Elia hid her pregnancy from the villagers. They whispered when her belly grew. They said she had been with a spirit, or worse, a demon. Her friend Mara begged her to tell the truth. "Elia, who is the father? You were sick, near death, and now this." "I don't know," Elia said softly. "All I remember is light. A man made of light." Mara recoiled. "You mustn't say that aloud. You'll be burned for witchcraft." "Then let them burn me," Elia said, touching her stomach. "But they will not touch my child." Azel watched her grow weaker as the child grew stronger. The energy inside her was too powerful for mortal flesh. She coughed blood. She dreamt of golden wings. Still, she refused to give up. "He saved me once," she would whisper into the night. "Maybe he will save me again." And sometimes, when the wind passed through her window, she thought she heard a reply, faint, sorrowful. "I cannot. Not again." Finally, the night came when the world would change forever. The sky was darker than usual. The moon hid behind clouds. The wind stopped. Even the wolves fell silent. Inside her small home, lit only by a dying fire, Elia gave birth, alone. There was no midwife. No neighbors came. She bit down on her own sleeve to stop the screams. Hours passed, until at last, a sound broke the stillness. Not a cry, but a slow exhale, like someone taking their first breath after centuries of waiting. Elia looked down at her son. His skin was pale as moonlight, his eyes a strange silver. He didn't cry. He simply looked at her, calm, aware. Her breath caught. My little one," she whispered. "What are you?" In the forest beyond, Azel stood frozen. He had felt it, the pulse of a new kind of life. It was not of heaven, nor of earth. It was something in between. "No," he said again. "Heaven, do not punish her. Take me instead." But heaven remained silent. The stars refused to shine that night. And when the dawn came, Elijah named her son Seraphiel, a name she claimed came to her in a dream. "Seraphiel," she whispered, touching his tiny hand. "It means the sorrow of angels." Years passed. Seraphiel grew quickly. By the age of 3, he no longer cried. By 5, he could speak with strange wisdom. When he looked at animals, they would come to him. Birds landed on his arms. Wolves sat at his feet. Children played near him but left uneasy, unable to explain why. He smiled rarely, but when he did, the air seemed to warm. The villagers began to whisper again. "That child is cursed," said one. "He does not eat like the others," said another. "He stares through people," muttered a third. Elijah ignored them all. She loved him fiercely. At night she would hold him and sing lullabies, though sometimes he would hum a strange melody back, a tune she had never taught him. It was soft, beautiful, but ancient. It made her heart ache without knowing why. From the forest, Azel watched in silence. He longed to hold his son, but dared not. His presence would bring judgment upon them both. He told himself he was protecting them by staying away, but every day he felt the distance like a knife. Sometimes, he whispered to the stars, "Is this mercy? To save a woman's life, only to damn her child." But the stars did not answer. When Seraphiel turned 7, something began to change. He grew distant, restless. He would sit by the river and stare at his reflection for hours. "Mother," he said one evening, "why do I feel like I don't belong here?" "Because you are special," Elijah said, smiling gently. "Special?" "Yes. You were born for a reason, my love." "Then why do the people fear me?" "Because they don't understand you." "Do you?" he asked quietly. "I try." That night, Elijah dreamed of the forest burning with light. And from within that light, a voice whispered, "He will thirst soon." She woke trembling. Seraphiel began to eat less. Food lost its taste. Water made him sick. Sometimes, she found him standing outside at night, staring at the moon, whispering words in a language no human spoke. Once, she heard him say, "Father, why am I cold inside?" Azel heard it too, from afar, and fell to his knees in the dark. He knew what was coming. The blood in Seraphiel's veins was not human. It was forged from a divine act that had broken creation's balance. It demanded something to sustain itself. Something alive. Something sacred. And when that hunger would awaken, heaven would tremble again. Azel wanted to warn her, but he could not appear. His very form would burn the mortal realm. So he did what no fallen angel had done before. He prayed, not to heaven, but to the silence between stars. "Please," he whispered, "let my son be spared my punishment. Let him know love before he knows hunger." But silence was the only reply. And so the years drifted by, carrying with them the quiet tension of fate. Elijah's health began to fade again, as if life itself was being drawn away slowly, not by sickness, but by the bond between her and the child of both light and shadow. The day would come when mercy's act would birth a curse, when love would become hunger, when heaven would reap what it had refused to forgive. But that is a story for another chapter. The winter of Seraphiel's 12th year came early. The forests turned silver before autumn had fully died, and the rivers slowed into glass. The village whispered that it was a bad omen. The women crossed themselves when the boy passed by. Even the dogs barked for no reason when he drew near. Elijah tried to keep him close, but Seraphiel had begun to wander. He walked through the woods for hours without food or coat, returning without frostbite or fear. Sometimes he came home with wild animals following him, a wolf at his heel, or crows perched on his arms. He said nothing about it, and Elia stopped asking. Some things, she felt, were better left in mystery. But she could see he was changing. His face grew sharper, his skin pale as marble. His eyes, once silver, now shimmered faintly red when the moonlight struck them. He no longer slept easily. He would wake in the night, clutching his chest, whispering words that were not his own. "The stars are bleeding again," he murmured once, eyes open but unfocused. "What do you mean, my son?" Elia asked, brushing his hair back. "They cry for something lost." "You're dreaming." "No," he said, turning toward her. "They cry for me." She tried to smile, to calm him, but her hands shook. The same dream had visited her 3 nights in a row, a storm, a voice, and her son standing in fire that did not burn him. Azel, still watching from the forest, saw it all. He had not aged since the day he fell, but sorrow had carved deep shadows into his once bright face. He could feel the curse awakening in the boy's blood, the hunger that was never meant to exist. He whispered to the wind, "Please, let there be another way." But heaven remained silent. Then came the night of the storm. Lightning cracked through the trees like blades of fire. Wind howled against the roofs, tearing thatch from homes. The villagers hid inside, whispering prayers. In Elia's small cottage, the storm found its way in, shaking walls, snapping the shutters. The fire guttered, then flared. Seraphiel sat by the hearth, staring into the flames. His lips moved without sound, as though answering something no one else could hear. Then suddenly, he gasped. His body convulsed. His skin turned white as bone. His lips darkened. He fell to the floor. "Seraphiel!" Elia cried, catching him. His body was cold, his pulse faint. "Stay with me, please." He opened his eyes briefly, but they were no longer the eyes of a child. They glowed faintly, silver bleeding into red. He looked at her with a strange sadness. "Mother, I'm so hungry," he whispered. "I'll bring you food, bread, anything." "Not that kind." "Then what? Tell me, my son. What do you need?" "I don't know, but I can hear it inside you." The storm raged outside, thunder rolling like war drums. Elia held him tighter, rocking him as she had when he was small. "You'll be all right," she whispered. "Sleep, my boy. The storm will pass." But he didn't sleep. His breathing grew shallow. His fingers clutched at her arm, not in pain, but in longing. His head tilted toward her neck as though drawn by instinct. And then, gently, almost tenderly, he bit her. There was no scream, no struggle. It was not an act of violence. It was something older, quieter, like a river meeting the sea. Elia felt no fear, only warmth, as if her son's touch carried the same light that had once saved her life. Her heartbeat slowed. Her breath faded. And when it ended, her body lay still in his arms. Seraphiel pulled away, trembling. Blood stained his lips. The firelight flickered against his face, and for the first time, he saw no reflection in the hearth's shimmer. He lifted his mother's hand to his cheek and broke down. "I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to." Outside, the storm fell silent. Even the thunder seemed to grieve. In the forest, Azel felt it, a cold pulse that tore through creation. He knew immediately what had happened. His son had crossed the line heaven feared most. Azel appeared at the edge of the cottage, cloaked in shadow, his once bright wings now only faint embers. He watched Seraphiel weep over Elia's body. "My son," he whispered. But he could not enter. His presence would destroy what little remained of her soul. For a moment, Seraphiel looked up, and though he could not see his father, he felt him. "Who are you?" he asked into the dark. "The one who made you possible," Azel's voice trembled. "Then why does it hurt so much?" "Because mercy is heavier than sin." Azel turned away as tears fell down his face, not of water, but of ash. The heavens stirred for the first time in ages. The act of compassion that had defied their law had now borne its full consequence. A being that lived on blood, bound by sorrow, sustained by the life of others. Seraphiel, the first of his kind, had been born, and the world would never again be free of his shadow. The morning after Eliah's death was unnaturally still. No birds sang. No wolves called. Even the river beside the village seemed to hold its breath. Inside the small cottage, Seraphiel knelt beside his mother's body. The fire had long died, yet the room still glowed faintly, not from flame but from him. His skin seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. His eyes burned faintly red, the color of dying embers. He whispered softly, "You gave me life, and I took yours. What am I now, Mother?" He buried her beneath the cedar tree where she had once prayed for life, wrapping her body in the same cloak she had worn that snowy night so many years ago. As he stood over her grave, a single drop of blood fell from his lip and sank into the soil. The ground hissed, neither rejecting it nor accepting it, as if uncertain what kind of being it had received. When the villagers found the empty house and the strange grave days later, they fled. They said a demon had taken the boy, that the woman's soul had been eaten. None dared stay in the valley. And so the village fell silent, left to rot and be forgotten. Seraphiel wandered the world alone. He walked barefoot through snow and ash, feeling neither heat nor cold. He traveled across mountains and through forests, always at night, hiding from the sun's cruel gaze. At first, he tried to eat as men did, bread, meat, fruit, but everything turned to ash in his mouth. Water burned his throat. His body weakened until he could barely walk. And then the hunger returned, not a desire, but a need. It was like a song that filled his head, whispering from the pulse of every living thing around him. He could hear the rhythm of hearts, smell the flow of life in their veins. It was unbearable. One evening, he collapsed beneath the ruins of an ancient temple. He lay there, shivering, his skin gray, his heartbeat nearly still. 2 men, thieves passing through, found him. They thought he was a dying noble boy, easy prey. "Look at his clothes," one sneered. "Rich blood, I bet. He's barely breathing. Let's take what he has." As the first man reached for him, Seraphiel's eyes snapped open. They glowed with a light that froze the thieves in place. He rose slowly, as if waking from centuries of sleep. His voice was soft, broken. "You shouldn't be here." The men stepped back, but too late. Seraphiel moved faster than sight, one moment still, the next a blur of shadow and pale light. He seized the first man by the throat and lifted him with ease. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "You're alive. I can feel it. I need it." And then he fed. When it was over, the men lay lifeless on the temple floor, pale as moonlight. Seraphiel fell to his knees beside them, shaking violently. He stared at his hands, stained crimson. "No," he cried. "I don't want this. I didn't ask for this." The wind moved through the broken pillars, whispering back his words. He pressed his palms against his ears, but he could still hear the heartbeat of the world, every animal, every living soul, echoing inside him. "Please make it stop," he begged. "Someone, anyone." But no one answered. And so he wandered again, farther, deeper, through centuries that passed like days. He did not age. He did not sleep. He did not dream. Every time he tried to stay near others, death followed. Even the earth seemed to recoil from him. Grass wilted under his feet. Fires dimmed in his presence. Children cried without knowing why. He became a ghost that walked through history. Some saw him and fell to their knees, calling him the angel who hungers. Others tried to hunt him, believing he was a demon. He harmed no one unless hunger drove him beyond reason. And when he did feed, he did it gently, almost mercifully, taking only what he needed, leaving no wounds that could not heal. But the loneliness never left him. Sometimes, when the moon rose full and cold, he would stand on mountaintops and speak into the wind. "Father," he said, "if you can still hear me, tell me what I am." And somewhere beyond the stars, Azel would answer in a whisper carried by the wind. "You are what heaven fears and what it needs. You are the proof that love can break the law. Centuries passed. Seraphiel watched empires rise and fall, watched mortals worship gods far less powerful than the one who had fathered him. He never sought worship, never revenge. He simply existed, a shadow walking between mercy and curse. But heaven had not forgotten him. Every few centuries, an angel would appear before him, radiant, burning, silent. They never spoke, never struck. They would simply watch him, their eyes filled with something between sorrow and awe. Then they would vanish, leaving him to his endless wandering. He realized, in time, what they were waiting for. Not his destruction, but his fulfillment. He was not the end of something. He was the beginning. The first of a line that would one day either doom the world or save it. And somewhere beyond the veil, heaven stirred again, not in anger this time, but in anticipation. The world believed vampires were born of darkness. But the truth was far crueler. They were born of mercy. Time forgot Seraphiel, but the earth never did. He wandered through centuries like a ghost between moments. Kingdoms rose and turned to dust. Temples fell. Languages vanished. Yet he remained, pale, silent, unchanging. The blood in his veins, born of an angel's mercy, refused to die. He had long given up trying to understand why heaven left him alive. He no longer asked questions. He no longer prayed. He only existed, the quiet witness to history's endless rise and ruin. But one night, the sky changed. It was during what mortals would later call the Third Age, when kings worshipped idols of gold and scholars declared angels nothing more than myth. Seraphiel was walking through the ruins of an old city when he felt it. The air trembled. The stars blinked as if startled. And then the moon began to bleed. It was not the red of dusk or the orange of eclipse. It was deep, pulsing, alive, as if heaven itself had opened a wound. The world reacted at once. Dogs howled. Infants screamed. The sea turned black in places. In others, statues of gods wept salt. Men fell to their knees, crying out for forgiveness, though they didn't know for what. Seraphiel stared up at the crimson sky and whispered, "I've seen 1,000 moons, but never one that looked back." He felt something stir inside him, a pull, ancient and familiar, like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. It came from far away, but it spoke his name. That same night, in a forgotten temple carved into the cliffs of Samaria, an oracle who had been silent for 30 years awoke screaming. Her name was Tyrael. She was blind, her eyes long clouded by ash and salt. But she could see things heaven did not want seen. When her servants came running, they found her clawing at the stone floor, carving words into it with her bare hands. Her voice shook the walls as she chanted the prophecy. "When the blood of the first drinks the light of a child unborn," she cried, "he shall not find his end, but his purpose. From his line will come one who walks into heaven with blood on his hands, and be neither judged nor stopped. And on that day, the gates will open." Then she fell silent, her fingers bleeding, her lips still moving in prayer. The priests feared her. They sealed the temple. But her words escaped. They spread like fire through whispers, across deserts and seas, until even angels heard them. In the high places beyond the stars, the thrones gathered, the mightiest of the celestial order. For the first time since Azel's fall, heaven trembled. The prophecy spoke not of destruction, but return, of something born of exile that would one day re-enter heaven's gates, not as a rebel, but as a bridge. Some angels demanded war. "End his line," they said. "Cut the root before it blooms." Others whispered in fear, "If heaven decrees mercy through him, who are we to deny it?" And so they watched, as they had always done, silent, divided, uncertain. On earth, Seraphiel felt their gaze like fire on his skin. He looked up at the crimson moon and knew they were watching. "You look down on me again," he murmured. "But not to strike. To wait." He laughed softly, the sound more sorrow than mirth. "Then I will wait too." That night, he saw faces in his dreams, faces that were not his own, yet bore his eyes, his hunger, his sorrow. Men and women walking through ages to come, hiding from sunlight, feeding in shadows. He saw children born with blood-red eyes, some merciful, some monstrous. And he realized, the curse had begun to spread. His blood, spilled once in grief, had awakened something in the world. Those who drank of it, even unknowingly, would carry fragments of his essence, not pure as his, but powerful enough to twist their fate. They would hunger as he did, live as long as he did, die only by divine fire. Seraphiel awoke at dawn, trembling. "So this is my legacy," he whispered. "1,000 children I never wanted." The sky returned to normal, but the prophecy had already taken root. And heaven, for all its silence, could no longer undo what mercy had made. Years bled into centuries. The world changed, but the whispers did not. Somewhere in the east, a desert tribe told tales of the Pale Saint, a man who walked into fire and came out unharmed. In the frozen north, warriors spoke of the Sleepless One, who drank life from wounds and never aged. Across the sea, poets wrote of the angel who hungers, a creature neither demon nor god. The stories disagreed on names, but all spoke of one thing, a being who could not die. Seraphiel never sought these stories. But he began to sense echoes in the air, faint, distant heartbeats that felt familiar. They were like his, but weaker. Shadows of his shadow. Others like him had begun to appear. He traveled far to find them, through ruined cities and new empires, following rumors that sounded too much like his own reflection. And when he found the first, he almost could not believe it. It was a woman, pale, trembling, eyes bright as frost. She was hiding in the ruins of a chapel, her mouth stained red. A dead soldier lay beside her. When she saw him, she froze. "Stay away," she hissed. "I'll kill you if you come closer." "No," he said quietly. "You won't." "Who are you?" "The reason you exist." She didn't understand, but she felt it, the connection. The air around him pulsed with something ancient, familiar, terrifying. Her fear broke into tears. "I didn't want to hurt him," she whispered. "He begged for help. I only wanted to help." "And you took his life instead," Seraphiel finished softly. "As I once did." She looked up at him, eyes filled with grief. "What are we?" "Mistakes," he said. Then, after a pause, "Or maybe messages." He stayed with her for a time, teaching her how to survive, how to feed without cruelty, how to hide from light, how to live with the hunger without letting it consume her. But others like her began to appear, and not all listened. Some reveled in their new strength, killing without remorse. Some gathered in covens and declared themselves gods. They called their kind the bloodborne, and worshipped the night as a new creation. And soon, the world began to fear them. Seraphiel tried to guide them, carving symbols into stone, messages hidden in moonlight. Those who found them read words they didn't understand. "You were not born evil. You were born from mercy." But mercy was not enough to tame hunger. The more he tried to help, the worse it became. Villages were wiped out. Priests hunted the bloodborne. Holy men declared them demons. And Seraphiel, seeing the horror unfold, withdrew into solitude once more. He stood atop mountains and watched entire generations die, knowing he had started something that could not be undone. "I wanted to save one life," he whispered to the wind. "And now thousands bleed because of it." He could have ended them, his children of hunger, but he did not. He knew their pain too well. To kill them would be to kill the last proof that his love had once meant something. So he waited again. Waited for the meaning behind the prophecy to reveal itself. But heaven was not idle. The watchers who still lingered on the edges of creation began to whisper among themselves. The prophecy of the crimson moon had spoken clearly. From his line will come one who walks into heaven with blood on his hands. To some, it was blasphemy. To others, hope. And as the centuries stretched, the signs began to appear again. Omens, eclipses, children born with eyes that glowed faintly in darkness. Each one carried a trace of his blood. Each one pushed the world closer to whatever destiny heaven had written in silence. In his solitude, Seraphiel began to dream of heaven again, not as light, but as memory. He saw his father's face, broken and burning, whispering to him across the gulf of eternity. "You are the bridge," the voice said. "You were not cursed. You were chosen." Seraphiel woke in tears. He could no longer tell if he was dreaming of truth or madness. As dawn broke, he wandered through the remains of an old temple and found words carved into its altar, words no human hand could have written. "The gates will open not for the pure, but for the forgiven." He touched the stone, feeling it vibrate under his fingers. He didn't know who had written it, an angel, a watcher, or perhaps even himself in some forgotten time. But he understood then what the prophecy truly meant. The curse had never been about punishment. It was about redemption. His blood, born from mercy, carried the seed of a bridge, a way for what had fallen to find its way back to light. But only when the line had suffered enough to understand compassion the way he once did. And so he made his choice. He would walk the earth until the prophecy fulfilled itself, until one of his blood, born innocent, could walk into heaven not as a monster, but as a child of both grace and grief. He would be their shadow until then, their watcher, their forgotten father. From that night forward, those who lived in the dark began to speak of a new name whispered among them, the Weeping Father. A pale figure who appeared at the edge of dreams, leaving behind symbols carved in stone and messages of remorse. Some called him Myth. Others prayed to him. And though Seraphiel never answered, he heard them all. He walked through history unseen, haunted and haunting, waiting for the day when the bloodline of sorrow would finally fulfill the words spoken under the crimson moon. And in that quiet waiting, somewhere deep within him, hope, fragile, trembling, and impossible, began to stir again. He was the first vampire, born not from sin but from mercy. And his curse was not damnation, it was the slow, aching promise of forgiveness. The centuries had turned to dust, and still Seraphiel walked. He wandered through empires of marble and empires of smoke, through cities that worshipped gods whose names even heaven had forgotten. Each age changed its face, but not its heart. Men still prayed, still killed, still begged the stars for mercy. And Seraphiel, born of mercy, remained the quiet ghost who answered none of them. He had grown colder, though not in body. The hunger that once clawed at him had become something deeper, not thirst for blood, but thirst for meaning. He no longer counted time by years, but by the silence between heartbeats. And yet, one night, that silence broke. It was in the ruins of an old mountain monastery, half buried in snow. He had taken refuge there, drawn by the echo of forgotten prayers carved into its stones. He did not pray anymore, but sometimes, when the wind moved through cracked walls, he could almost hear heaven whisper back. That night, he lay still upon the altar, his eyes closed, his heartbeat slow as stone. Then a warmth brushed his face, not sunlight, but something older. When he opened his eyes, the world was burning gold. An angel stood before him. Not like Azel, not like the watchers of old. This one shone brighter than flame, 6 wings folded in silence, robes woven of both light and shadow. His face was hidden by a halo that burned without heat. Around him, the snow melted, and yet Seraphiel felt only cold. He did not move. He had been waiting for this visit for 1,000 years. "So it's finally time," Seraphiel said quietly. "Heaven sends one of its perfect ones to end the mistake it made." The angel did not speak. He simply watched. Seraphiel rose slowly to his feet, his crimson eyes fixed on the faceless light. "You could strike me down now," he said. "No blade would be needed. A thought, and I'd be dust. Isn't that what you've wanted all along?" Still, the angel said nothing. Seraphiel laughed softly. It was not a laugh of madness, but of exhaustion. "You don't even know, do you? You come because they tell you to watch, to judge, but not to feel. Just like my father before he broke your laws." At the mention of Azel, the halo flickered, a small sign, but Seraphiel noticed. He stepped closer, unafraid. "You remember him. The watcher who wept. The one who saved a dying girl and damned us all with love." The angel's wings shifted slightly, a ripple of gold in the dim hall. "Tell me," Seraphiel whispered, "did they erase his name completely? Or do you still whisper it when you think no one hears?" The air trembled. A low hum filled the hall, the voice of heaven itself, but not in words. Seraphiel understood enough. "So he is gone," he said. "Forgotten even by those he once served." He turned away, walking toward the broken window where snow drifted through. "Then do what you came to do. Heaven takes. That's what it does best." He waited for the strike, but none came. When he looked back, the angel was gone. Only a single feather remained, glowing faintly in the snow, a feather made of light and silence. Seraphiel picked it up and felt something strange. Sorrow, not his own. He stared at it for a long time. Then he smiled, though his eyes burned. "So you watch me, but not to kill me," he whispered. "You're waiting. For what?" He didn't know then that the angels were as afraid of him as he was of them. For Seraphiel was no longer an error to be erased. He was a prophecy still unfolding. From that night onward, he was never truly alone. Wherever he walked, through deserts, forests, cities of iron, he felt it, a gaze, unseen but constant. Angels watched him from the edges of dreams, from the reflection of the moon, from the silence that followed thunder. They never spoke. They never struck. But they were always there. At first, he hated them. Then, slowly, he pitied them. For they were prisoners too, chained by obedience to laws that had forgotten compassion. He began to speak to them, not expecting answers. "Do you ever wonder," he asked the empty air one night, "what mercy costs? You call it a crime when one of you feels it, but without mercy, what are you guarding? Heaven or pride?" The stars did not answer. But somewhere above the clouds, they flickered uneasily. And so the centuries continued, and Seraphiel became legend again, not among men, but among angels. They called him the one who endures, the creature heaven could not destroy and hell would not claim. But legends have a way of becoming prayers. And prayers, even the forgotten ones, eventually find their answer. Seraphiel found the mirror by accident. He had wandered far into the wastelands of the old world, where the sea had swallowed kingdoms and the sand whispered with the bones of forgotten empires. He came upon a temple half buried in salt, its roof broken, its altar cracked, its walls carved with images of angels long erased. At its heart stood a mirror taller than a man, framed in gold blackened by age. It should have been dust centuries ago, yet its surface was untouched, smooth, still, alive. Something in it called to him. He stepped closer, and for the first time in centuries, he felt fear. He had not seen his reflection since the night he took his mother's life. Even then, the fire had shown him nothing but flame. He did not know what he would find now, or if he would find anything at all. He looked into the mirror. At first, he saw only darkness. Then, faintly, a shape, his own face. Paler than bone, eyes faintly red, a trace of sorrow in every line. He reached out, fingers trembling. The glass rippled like water. For a moment, he saw someone else, Azel, his father, standing behind him, wings burning, eyes full of tears. "Father!" Seraphiel whispered. "Is it you?" The image flickered, then shifted. Azel was gone. In his place stood something else, a version of himself, older, darker, smiling with crimson-stained lips. "You know me," the reflection said. Its voice was his own, deeper, heavier. "No," Seraphiel breathed. "You're not real." "I am what you are becoming," the mirror said. "The part that stopped pretending to be merciful." Seraphiel stepped back, shaking his head. "I feed only when I must." "You feed because you can," the reflection whispered. "You mourn the dead, but you drink their lives. You call yourself sorrow, but you were born of blood. Why do you pretend you're still something better?" He wanted to break the glass, but his hand would not move. "If you hate what you are so much," the reflection hissed, "then end it. Step into the light. Bun. But you won't, will you? Because even now, you hope heaven still remembers you." Seraphiel's chest tightened. "I don't hope," he said. "Then why do you wait?" The question struck harder than any blade. He stared into his own crimson eyes, and for the first time, he saw the truth. He had not been wandering to escape judgment. He had been wandering to earn it. He wanted heaven to see him, to understand him, to forgive him. He wanted to prove that love, even when it breaks the law, should not be cursed forever. Tears burned his eyes, but they didn't fall. "If mercy is sin," he whispered, "then let sin redeem the stars." The reflection smiled one last time, then faded into darkness. The mirror turned black. And when Seraphiel looked again, he saw nothing, not even his shadow. He laughed softly. "So even the world refuses to see me now." He turned to leave, but the mirror cracked behind him, one long fracture splitting its surface from top to bottom. Light spilled through the crack, faint but steady, as if something behind it was waiting to be released. He touched the broken glass, and it pulsed like a heartbeat. "Not yet," a voice whispered faintly from within, neither male nor female, neither divine nor mortal. "Your time has not come." He stepped back, startled. "Whose voice is that?" "The one who will open the gates," the voice said. "The one born from your blood, yet free of your sorrow." Then the light faded. The mirror was still. Seraphiel stood there for a long time, his heart heavy with questions that had no answers. When he finally turned to leave, he looked once more at the cracked mirror and said, "Then let my waiting not be in vain." Outside, the desert wind howled like the cry of a dying god. Seraphiel walked into it, his cloak trailing behind him like a shadow of forgotten light. He did not know it then, but the moment the mirror cracked, heaven stirred again. The angels who watched him reported what they had seen: the broken reflection, the light from within, the whisper that was not of heaven's making. And the thrones, silent, fearful, uncertain, turned their gaze once more toward the earth. One of them spoke softly, "The bridge is awakening." And another answered, "Then mercy has not died." That night, Seraphiel dreamed again, of his mother, smiling through blood, and his father kneeling in fire. Between them stood a child, glowing with both darkness and light. The child reached out a hand to him and said, "Do not despair, father. What began in sorrow will end in forgiveness." He awoke weeping, not because of pain, but because for the first time in centuries, he felt something he had thought forever lost: hope. And so the legend deepened. The vampire who once cursed heaven now dreamed of returning to it. The being born of forbidden love still carried in his heart a flame that refused to die. For even in endless darkness, a single act of mercy can echo louder than all the laws of angels. He was not the end. He was the waiting between endings. The promise that love, once given, could never truly be erased. The world changed its face again. Iron rose where stone had ruled, and men no longer prayed to the sky. They prayed to themselves. They built towers that scraped the clouds and called it progress, forgetting the gods that once watched them bleed. But even in this new age of pride and noise, the old hunger moved quietly beneath the surface, older than every empire combined. Seraphiel walked among them unseen. He had learned the art of blending in, wearing the faces of centuries, sometimes a monk, sometimes a traveler, sometimes a shadow behind the eyes of a poet who wrote of sorrow he could not name. The world no longer believed in angels or curses, yet they still told stories of a figure who walked without shadow, whose eyes carried both fire and grief. They called him the Pale Saint. In some cities, beggars carved his image into walls for protection. In others, priests burned those carvings as heresy. But everywhere his name lingered, strange things happened. Dying children woke with color in their cheeks. Plagues vanished overnight, and sometimes, on nights of crimson moonlight, people disappeared only to be found the next day, alive, but weak, whispering that they had seen an angel who drank the sickness from their veins. Seraphiel never stayed long. Mercy, he had learned, always brought punishment in its wake. One winter night, in the ruins of a stone citadel swallowed by snow, he found a girl hiding from soldiers. Her name was Lyra, thin as wind, eyes full of terror. She had stolen bread and been marked for death. When she saw him, she raised a dagger. "Stay back. I'll kill you before they do." Seraphiel simply stood there, hood drawn low. "If you could kill me," he said softly, "I'd thank you for it." His calm frightened her more than his presence. She hesitated, shivering. "Who are you?" she asked. "No one that heaven remembers," he answered. The soldiers' voices grew louder outside. Seraphiel turned toward the door. "Do you wish to live?" "Yes," she breathed. "Then close your eyes." When she did, the torches of the soldiers flared, and their screams filled the night. When she opened her eyes again, the air smelled of iron, and the snow outside was streaked with blood. Seraphiel stood still, his eyes glowing faintly. "They would have killed you," he said. "Now they will harm no one." She looked at him in horror. "You drank them." "No," he said. "I freed them from their hunger for cruelty." She didn't understand, but she followed him anyway. For months they traveled together, a ghost and a girl. He never ate, never slept, but spoke gently when she asked of the stars. She began to call him Saint Seraphiel. He smiled at the title, though it cut him inside. "Saints are remembered," he said. "I am only what mercy left behind." When Lyra finally grew old and her hair turned silver, she built a small shrine in his name. On her deathbed she whispered to her children, "He will come again when the moon bleeds, and he will not bring death, but forgiveness." That whisper became a legend. And so, as centuries turned once more, the cult of the Pale Saint was born. Men and women who worshipped a figure half angel, half monster. They said he walked the earth to judge the blood of mankind, taking only what was impure. They built hidden temples underground, lighting crimson candles in his honor. They carved his sigil, a single tear within a halo, on the walls of catacombs, believing it could keep true monsters away. Seraphiel never asked for followers, but he felt them. Their prayers brushed against him like moth wings in the dark. Sometimes, when he passed their shrines, he would pause and whisper, "I am not your God." But still, the candles flared brighter. The angels, watching from the unseen, trembled. For every prayer to Seraphiel weakened heaven's silence. Heaven could kill him at any moment, yet it did not. Perhaps it no longer knew how. Perhaps it was afraid that in destroying him, it would destroy the last echo of mercy still left in creation. And so the Pale Saint wandered through ages, the myth of his compassion feeding the same bloodline that once began with his curse. There are moments in eternity when even heaven forgets to breathe. It was such a night when Seraphiel reached the Valley of Shattered Wings, a place where, long ago, fallen angels had burned when heaven purged its rebels. The ground was black glass, the air thick with the scent of ash and memory. He came because the hunger had returned, not for blood, but for understanding. He had begun to sense something new in the world, a pulse that echoed his own, but purer, warmer, as though his curse had found a way to heal itself. He followed that pulse for days until he reached the valley. There, among the scorched stones, he found a child. A boy, no more than 10, lying half-buried in dust. His skin was pale but alive, his chest rising and falling steadily. When Seraphiel lifted him, the child's eyes opened, silver shot with gold, not red. "Who are you?" Seraphiel asked. "I don't know," the boy whispered. "But I dream of you." Seraphiel froze. "Of me?" "You walk in my dreams," the boy said. "You're always crying." The boy's pulse was steady, but his scent was wrong, not mortal, not angelic. He smelled like rain on cold metal, like new life born from old sin. Seraphiel realized what he was holding. A child born from his bloodline, but untouched by its hunger. The prophecy whispered across centuries stirred in his memory. When the blood of the first drinks the light of a child unborn, he shall not find his end, but his purpose. Seraphiel set the boy down gently. "You shouldn't exist," he said softly. "Neither should you," the boy replied. For the first time in ages, Seraphiel laughed, a quiet, startled laugh that sounded like wind through old leaves. "What's your name?" "They called me Kale," the boy said, "before they died." Seraphiel frowned. "Who?" "The ones who made me. They said I was the answer to a promise." "A promise?" "That mercy would return." The sky darkened. A wind rose, hot and dry. The ashes around them began to stir like living things. Seraphiel looked up and saw light forming, columns of gold fire descending from the heavens. Angels. Dozens of them. They came in silence, wings wide, weapons sheathed but burning with power. Seraphiel pushed the boy behind him. "Stay still," he said. "They won't harm you." But his voice wavered. He wasn't sure anymore. One of the angels stepped forward, his armor white as bone, his eyes hidden beneath a crown of light. "Seraphiel," he said. His voice carried both thunder and grief. "The prophecy ripens. The blood of the first has found its mirror. Step aside." "No," Seraphiel said. "He's just a child." "He is the door through which heaven must pass again," the angel replied. "And the door must first be opened by fire." Seraphiel's eyes flared red. "Then you've learned nothing." The ground shook as the angels drew their blades of living light. Seraphiel spread his arms, his shadow rising behind him like wings made of night. "You call me cursed," he said, "but you are bound by cruelty. You fear mercy because it disobeys you. I will not let you touch him." The angels hesitated. None wished to strike the first vampire, the creature they had watched for eons but never dared destroy. The prophecy had marked him as both forbidden and necessary. Finally, the leader lowered his weapon. "Then protect him, pale saint," he said. "But know this, when the child grows, heaven will claim him. No blood escapes its purpose." With that, the angels vanished, leaving behind trails of smoke that smelled of burning rain. Seraphiel turned to Cale. The boy was staring at him with wide eyes. "You defied them," he whispered. "I've done worse," Seraphiel said with a faint smile. "Will they come back?" "Always." The boy reached for his hand. Seraphiel hesitated, then let him. The touch was warm, truly warm. He had forgotten what warmth felt like. "Then I'll stay with you," Cale said, "until the gates open." Seraphiel looked down at him and saw something he had not seen in thousands of years, a reflection of hope that did not vanish in his presence. "You shouldn't," he said. "Where I walk, even light dies." "Then I'll carry it," the boy answered simply. And in that moment, something inside the pale saint cracked open. The endless grief that had kept him alive turned to something else, purpose. He understood now that his curse had not been punishment, it had been preparation. Through him, mercy had found a body that could endure eternity. Through the child, mercy would find a way back home. As dawn broke over the valley, the light touched Seraphiel's face without burning him for the first time. He stood motionless, watching the sunrise. Cale looked up. "Does it hurt?" "No," Seraphiel whispered. "It feels like forgiveness." The boy smiled. "Then maybe that's what you are after all." "What?" "A saint." Seraphiel laughed softly, shaking his head. "A saint doesn't drink blood, Cale." "Maybe this one does," the boy said, grinning. "Maybe this one saves souls the hard way." Seraphiel's smile faded into wonder. He looked toward the sky, where faint traces of gold still glimmered. "Then let heaven watch," he murmured. "Let them see what their mercy has become." He lifted the child into his arms and began to walk east, toward the rising sun. Behind them, the valley of shattered wings shimmered as the wind carried away the last of the ashes. In their place, small green shoots pushed through the black glass, life returning to the place where heaven's wrath had once fallen. And far above, unseen but listening, the thrones whispered among themselves. "He walks toward dawn," said one. "Then the prophecy moves," said another. "And when the gates open?" "Perhaps they will not open for angels," the first replied, "but for mercy wearing the face of man." The first vampire did not live to destroy the light. He lived long enough to teach it how to forgive itself. Years passed like the slow drift of stars. Seraphiel and Cale traveled through lands that had long forgotten the language of gods. They walked through ruined temples, silent cathedrals, and cities that glittered like false heavens built from steel and greed. Men no longer spoke of angels. They spoke of progress, of science, of self. But in every shadow where blood was spilled, Seraphiel could still feel heaven watching. Cale grew, not as a human does, but as something between. He did not age quickly, nor did he hunger for blood. He ate mortal food, but his touch carried warmth even Seraphiel could feel. When Kale smiled, the world seemed lighter. When he prayed, though he did not know to whom, the air would stir with unseen wings. Seraphiel often watched him in silence, half in awe, half in fear. "You are what I was meant to be," he said one night by the fire. "What do you mean?" "You live without hunger. You carry mercy without pain. I burned for it. You breathe it." Kale looked into the flames. "Maybe mercy needed both of us," he said quietly. "You to carry the wound, and me to heal it." Seraphiel said nothing. He wanted to believe that, but heaven's silence still hung heavy over them. One evening, as they crossed a desert of glass, sand turned to crystal by ancient fire, the wind changed. It carried a sound not of nature, but of judgment. A hum, low and endless, filled the sky. Seraphiel stopped walking. His eyes turned upward. "He's here." Kale followed his gaze. From the horizon came a light too bright to be the sun, white fire burning without shadow. The air bent around it. The ground cracked beneath their feet. And then the angel appeared. Not like the others, this one burned hotter, brighter, its presence crushing the air itself. 6 wings spread across the sky like the petals of a dying star. Its face was hidden behind a veil of molten gold. When it spoke, the world seemed to bow. "Seraphiel, child of fallen grace," it thundered. "You have wandered long enough." Seraphiel stepped forward, unflinching. "You've sent watchers, whispers, omens. Now you send yourself. Tell me, what name do you carry?" "I am Raziel," said the angel, voice like a bell made of fire. "Keeper of the word. Messenger of the end." Kale clung to Seraphiel's cloak, but the vampire raised a hand to steady him. "The end of what?" "Of waiting," Raziel said. "The prophecy ripens. The child's blood will open the gates, and heaven will no longer suffer delay." Seraphiel's eyes glowed faintly red. "You call it prophecy. I call it mercy trying to breathe again." Raziel descended, his wings folding until he stood before them. The sand beneath his feet turned to ash. "Mercy has cost too much," the angel said. "Heaven trembles under its weight. The line must be closed before it consumes both realms." Seraphiel stepped between Raziel and Kale. "Then you'll have to go through me." The angel regarded him for a long moment, then sighed, a sound like thunder softened by sorrow. "You misunderstand your place, pale saint. You are not an obstacle. You are the key. Without your blood, the boy is only flesh." Seraphiel's hands clenched. "You want to use me, to open the gates yourselves. The will of heaven must be fulfilled." He laughed bitterly. "The will of heaven created me. The will of heaven burned my father for love. The will of heaven has forgotten what it means to feel." For the first time, Raziel hesitated. The great angel looked almost weary. "You speak as if you know compassion better than the one who made it." "I don't," Seraphiel said, stepping closer, "but I know what it costs." He raised his hand, and for a moment, the air shimmered. Raziel flinched, not from fear, but from recognition. The same divine energy that once flowed through Azel's pulsed faintly within Seraphiel's blood. "The fallen's light still lives in you," Raziel said softly. "That should not be." "And yet it is," Seraphiel answered. They stood in silence, 2 relics of a creation that no longer remembered them. Then Raziel's gaze turned to Kale. "He carries no curse," the angel said. "No hunger. No sin. Perhaps he is the proof we needed." Seraphiel stepped in front of the boy again. "He's not proof. He's a person." The angel's expression darkened. "He is destiny." And with that, Raziel vanished into light, leaving behind a whisper that lingered on the wind. "When the gates open, one of you must stay behind." Kale turned to Seraphiel, eyes wide. "What does that mean?" Seraphiel stared at the fading glow in the sky. "It means heaven doesn't plan on both of us living through it." For many months, they journeyed east, following rivers of glass and valleys where the stars seemed close enough to touch. Seraphiel had grown restless. Raziel's words haunted him. He had faced angels before, but never one who looked at him with pity instead of hatred. Kale tried to lighten his heart. He asked questions about the old world, about angels, about his mother, about Elijah. Seraphiel told him everything, even the parts that still tore at his soul. "So she died because of you?" Kale asked one night. "She died because of what I am." "And what are you?" "The echo of love that heaven tried to erase." Kale thought for a long time before answering. "Then I think heaven's echo sounds beautiful." Seraphiel turned away quickly so the boy wouldn't see the tears that threatened to fall. They settled in a ruined monastery at the edge of a dying forest. For the first time in centuries, Seraphiel rested, not from exhaustion, but from a feeling he couldn't name. Peace, perhaps. Or something like it. Yet beneath that stillness, something stirred. The nights grew warmer. Seraphiel began to dream again, visions of fire, of gates opening, of wings torn and mended. Each dream ended the same way, with Kale standing in light, his eyes gold and silver, reaching out as Seraphiel burned to ash. He never told Kale. But Kale felt it. His own blood began to hum. When he prayed, his voice carried through the air like wind over water. Flowers bloomed where he walked. Animals followed him as they once had followed Seraphiel. And sometimes, when the moon was full, his eyes glowed bright enough to light the dark. "You're changing," Seraphiel said one evening. "I can feel it," Kale admitted. "Something wants to wake inside me." "Then don't fight it." "Aren't you afraid?" "Always," Seraphiel said, smiling faintly. "But fear is only proof that we still have something to lose." The next night, the world shifted. Seraphiel awoke to thunder, not from the sky, but from beneath the earth. The monastery trembled. The candles flared blue. Kale stood at the center of the room, eyes glowing like twin suns. His voice echoed in two tones, one human, one divine. "They're calling me," he said. "Heaven's gates. I can hear them." Seraphiel rose, his heart pounding. "You can't answer." "Not yet." "If I don't, everything burns," Kale said, his body trembling. "The prophecy." "The prophecy can wait," Seraphiel snapped. "You're not ready." But even as he spoke, light spilled from Kale's chest, forming wings of pure energy that lifted him from the ground. Seraphiel shielded his eyes. The air grew scorching. "Kale!" he shouted. "Listen to me." The boy looked down at him, tears of light streaking his face. "You carried the curse so I could carry the mercy," he said. "But mercy isn't meant to hide. It's meant to rise." Then, in a blinding flash, he was gone, drawn upward into a column of light that split the sky. The sound was like the breaking of 1,000 chains. Seraphiel fell to his knees, the room collapsing around him. The air smelled of rain and ash. For a long time, he did not move. When at last he stood, the dawn was bleeding across the horizon. He stepped outside. The forest around the monastery was burning, not with flame, but with light. Every tree shimmered with golden veins. Every leaf hummed with life. He could feel Kale everywhere. And yet, he was alone. Then a shadow fell across him. Raziel stood once more, wings lowered, eyes soft. "He has gone beyond the veil," the angel said. "He's just a child," Seraphiel whispered. "He is the bridge," Raziel replied. "And you are the foundation upon which he stands." Seraphiel looked up, eyes blazing. "What happens to him now?" "He will walk where none have walked since the fall. If he carries mercy truly, the gates will open, not for heaven, not for hell, but for all creation." "And if he fails?" Raziel's expression darkened. "Then the light dies, and you with it." Seraphiel turned toward the sunrise. "Then I will walk until he returns. I will carry the hunger until mercy no longer needs me." Raziel nodded slowly. "You were never damned, pale saint. You were the waiting between forgiveness and fire." With that, The angel vanished, leaving only the sound of beating wings fading into the dawn. Seraphiel stood alone, his eyes on the rising light. He could feel Kale somewhere beyond the sky, carrying the hope he had never been allowed to keep. For the first time in all his endless years, the hunger inside him stilled. It was not gone, but quiet, like a beast finally at peace. He looked down at his hands, pale and scarred, and whispered, "Father, your mercy was not wasted. Your song still lives." And when he spoke, the wind answered, not with words, but with warmth. Far above, beyond sight and sound, a boy of gold and silver walked toward a gate that had been closed since time began. Behind him, a voice whispered through eternity. The first vampire was born from love, not darkness. And love, once born, cannot die. Light had swallowed Kale, yet he did not burn. He drifted through a place that was not sky and not heaven, a corridor of living flame where every spark whispered a memory of creation. Figures of light passed him, faceless but gentle. They called him child of two mercies. "Where am I?" he asked. "Between," a voice answered, "where the law ends and forgiveness begins." Below, he saw the world, Seraphiel walking alone, the forests glowing from his passing. He reached down, wanting to return, but the flame wrapped around him like a hand. "You were born to open, not to return," the voice said. "But remember what opened you, love that defied command." Before him appeared a gate woven from song and shadow. Its lock pulsed with the rhythm of blood. When Kale touched it, the light turned red, and the gate began to hum, half divine, half human. It waited, not for purity, but for understanding. And he realized that the gate would open only when mercy and hunger, heaven and earth, learned to forgive each other. On earth, centuries moved again. Seraphiel's quiet peace ended when whispers reached him from the cities below. The bloodborn, his scattered descendants, had united under a new banner, the Crimson Sun. They no longer hid. They fed openly, preaching that Kale's ascension had freed them from guilt. Their leader, a woman called Vareth, claimed to speak with the boy beyond the veil. Her followers called her the true mouth of the saint. They built temples in his name and began to hunt humans as sacrifices for the dawn to come. Seraphiel descended from the mountains to stop them. He entered one of their gatherings, a cathedral made of bone and glass. Thousands knelt before Vareth. When they saw him, they fell silent. The woman smiled, her fangs catching the light. "Father of the blood," she said, "you return to witness our triumph." "You mistake blasphemy for triumph," Seraphiel answered. "No, pale saint. You were the first hunger. We are its perfection. The child you guard has opened the way." She lifted her arms. Above them hung a crimson eclipse, the same sign that had once bled across the heavens. The bloodborn roared in praise. Seraphiel's voice cut through them like a blade. Mercy was never meant to be worshipped through slaughter. But they did not listen. They saw him not as father, but as myth, a symbol to possess. Vareth struck first, moving faster than light, her claws dripping red flame. Seraphiel caught her hand mid-strike. His own blood boiled where she touched him. "If you are mercy," she hissed, "then show it." He did. He pulled her close, whispered a word in the language of angels, and her fire went out. She collapsed, not dead, but weeping. The crowd fell silent. Seraphiel looked over them, eyes shining like dying stars. "Kale has not called for blood," he said. "He called for forgiveness. And I will not let you turn salvation into hunger again." Then he opened his hand, and every candle in the cathedral burned blue, the color of truth. The bloodborn saw themselves reflected in that light, and their fury turned to shame. When dawn rose, they were gone, dispersed, frightened, whispering his name as both curse and prayer. Seraphiel stood among the ashes and felt Kale's presence again, faint but steady, like a heartbeat through the sky. "You're still there," he said softly. "Then so am I." And far above, beyond the veil, Kale heard him. The gate before him pulsed brighter. Two lights, one red, one gold, began to intertwine. Beyond the veil, Kale walked in light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Every step echoed with voices, not human, not angelic, but the memory of creation itself. He had come to the gates of return, where heaven and earth once touched before pride tore them apart. The gates were not made of gold, but of truth. They shimmered with images of every act of mercy and every sin born from love. When Cale approached, they whispered his name, not in sound, but in warmth. He could feel them recognizing him, not as an intruder, but as something they had waited for. "You are the bridge," said a voice behind him. It was Azel, his grandfather, not as he had fallen, but as he once was, radiant and whole. "Your blood is my redemption," Azel said. "But opening those gates will demand a price." "Whose price?" Cale asked. "The one who still walks beneath them." Cale saw Seraphiel in his mind, the pale saint wandering through the mortal world, his shadow falling across broken temples. The bond between them pulsed like a thread of living light. "He has carried my burden long enough," Cale said. "He carries yours now," Azel replied gently. "And when mercy and sorrow meet, one must stay behind." The gates groaned, a sound like 1,000 hearts breaking in unison. Cale reached out, and his hand passed through the light. He saw flashes, Seraphiel confronting the bloodborne, forgiving Vareth, walking through fire without burning. Each act of forgiveness made the gates glow brighter. Then the voice of heaven itself, ancient, vast, weary, spoke. "Child of the first sin and the last hope, why do you seek to open what was closed?" "Because mercy is not meant to end," Cale said. "Mercy was born from disobedience. Then let obedience learn from it." A silence followed, deep enough to drown eternity. Then the light changed. The gates began to unfold, not outward, but inward, revealing a path of flame that led downward, toward earth. Cale understood. It was not heaven that needed opening. It was the human heart. Seraphiel felt it first, a tremor through the air, the scent of lightning before the storm. He was standing among the ruins of a cathedral when the sky split open. From the rift poured angels, hundreds of them, wings folded like swords, eyes burning with sorrow. At their center came Raziel once more. But this time, the fire in his eyes was not wrath, it was mourning. "Pale saint," he said, "the gates have begun to open. The heavens tremble. We are sent to end you before the balance breaks." Seraphiel didn't move. He looked past Raziel to the glowing scar in the sky. If heaven fears mercy, then maybe heaven is what needs saving. Raziel drew his blade, its light reflecting in Seraphiel's crimson eyes. "Do not make us your enemies." "You already are," Seraphiel said quietly. "But not by my choice." The angels descended like a storm. Wings of fire surrounded him. Spears of light struck the earth. Seraphiel raised his hands, and shadows erupted. Not darkness, but the memory of every soul he had spared. They rose around him like a tide, shielding him from heaven's wrath. Raziel struck, but Seraphiel caught his sword. Blood and light mingled on their hands. "Why do you resist?" Raziel demanded. "You could have been forgiven." "Forgiveness without understanding is just another punishment," Seraphiel growled. The angels hesitated, not from fear, but from confusion. For the first time, they saw something in him that they could not define, a love that refused to die, even when heaven commanded it to. Then the sky turned crimson. Cale's voice echoed from above, not loud, but clear. "Heaven does not need victory. It needs mercy." The angels froze. Their blades dimmed. Raziel lowered his sword. From the wound in the heavens descended a rain of light, droplets that shimmered like blood and tears together. Wherever they fell, the land bloomed. The war ended before it began. Seraphiel looked upward and saw Cale standing beyond the veil, eyes shining with both light and shadow. "It's time," Cale said softly. "If you open it," Seraphiel whispered, "I cannot follow." "I know. But you'll never be forgotten." Seraphiel smiled, the first true smile since his mother's death. "Then go, my son. Show them what mercy looks like." Cale raised his hand. The gates blazed open, and light swept across creation. Every angel, every demon, Every mortal soul felt it, the warmth of a love that asked for nothing and forgave everything. When the light faded, Seraphiel was gone. All that remained was a single feather, black at the tip and white at the root, resting where he had stood. Raziel knelt, his voice trembling. "He was never our enemy." "No," said a whisper from the wind, "only your mirror." And for the first time since the dawn of time, heaven wept. When the gates opened, the sound was not thunder, it was music. Every note was a heartbeat, every heartbeat a name. Cale stood at the threshold, the veil behind him a river of flame that did not burn. Beyond it waited a sky that had forgotten color, waiting for his choice to paint it again. He looked down through the shimmering wound between worlds. Beneath him lay the earth, ruined cities, quiet seas, and the faint glow of life reborn from mercy's reign. And there, among those ashes, he saw Seraphiel's feather, half white, half black, lying at the roots of a tree that now bloomed with silver leaves. "He carried the hunger so I could carry the hope," Cale whispered. "But what am I without him?" The light around him shifted. From it stepped shapes, neither angels nor mortals, but something between. They were the healed, souls once lost, now remade by forgiveness. They bowed before him, murmuring his many names: Bridge, Child of Dawn, Son of the Pale Saint. "Do not bow," Cale said. "Rise." Mercy kneels to no one. A figure formed among them, cloaked in dusk. It was Raziel, wings dimmed, eyes heavy. "The heavens await your command," the angel said. "Command." Cale echoed. "That word has already broken too much." "Then what will you do?" "Not rule," Cale answered. "Remember." He walked toward the heart of the gate where light turned red, not from wrath but from life. Every step he took bled color into the pale world, gold becoming dawn, crimson becoming warmth. Where his feet touched, the angels regained the memory of tears. Raziel bowed his head. "You make even heaven human." "Then perhaps heaven was always meant to be," Cale said softly. "Not higher, just kinder." He stretched out his hands. The gate pulsed once, twice, then folded outward like a flower. Light poured through the cosmos, weaving heaven and earth together once more. The song of creation began again, but this time it carried sorrow within it, so it would never forget the cost of love. And in that moment, Cale understood what Seraphiel had become. Not lost, not gone, but the heartbeat inside the song itself. 1,000 years later, people still told stories. In the rebuilt world, 2 suns rose each morning, one golden, one pale. The wise said it was heaven's gift, a reminder that light and shadow could share the same sky. Children were taught that the first sun warmed, and the second forgave. In the city at the center of the new world stood a single cathedral with no doors. Its walls were carved with feathers, some black, some white. Inside burned an eternal flame that neither consumed nor faded. They called it the heart of Seraphiel. Pilgrims came from every land to sit before that flame. Some prayed, some wept, some simply listened, because, when the wind was right, the fire whispered. It spoke not of gods, but of choices. "Do not fear the darkness that teaches you how to see." And among those pilgrims sometimes walked a stranger. He looked young, but his eyes held centuries. He wore no halo, no crown, only a simple cloak stitched with 2 colors, one red, one white. He would kneel before the flame, smile faintly, and whisper as though to an old friend, "I kept your promise, Father." The gates stayed open. Then he would rise and vanish before anyone could ask his name. But everyone who saw him felt lighter afterward, as though some invisible wound had healed. And sometimes, on nights when both suns set together, they swore they could see 2 figures walking across the horizon. One tall, cloaked in shadow and light, the other small, radiant, carrying a feather between his fingers. No temple dared to claim them. No angel dared to name them. They belonged to everyone who had ever loved beyond permission. Because the story of Seraphiel and Cale was not a story of monsters or gods. It was the story of every heart that chose compassion when judgment would have been easier. The world no longer feared the word vampire. It had come to mean something else. One who remembers mercy when the heavens forget. And the heavens, once silent, now sang back. Every story leaves behind a shadow, and this is only the beginning. Subscribe now, because the next tale waits in the dark, older, deeper, and even more forbidden.